Welcome to episode 34 of the Left Crew Politics Podcast. I'm the host of this episode, Rick Shew. And joining me today is CEO of Reach Digital and Director of Social Media at The First, fellow Texan Jason Howerton. Jason, how are you, sir?
I'm good. We've been trying to set this up for a little while.
We have. This has been going back and forth for damn near a year.
I think so. So it's good.
So I'm going to yeah, it's great, man. I'm going to timestamp this, and afterwards I want you to, if you don't mind, tell everybody what The First is.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay? Because I know you were the Blaze for a long time. So anyway, today is Thursday, April 30th, and tomorrow, which is Friday, when everybody will be listening to this will be going live Friday morning, our governor, Jason and I, Governor Greg Abbott, is bringing business back to Texas, so to speak, in what we call phase one. And he's going to open retail stores, restaurants, which is my world. We'll get more into that in a moment. Movie theaters, malls, and limited capacity of 25%. What Jason and I are going to talk about today is this the right thing to do? Are we excited about it? What are our thoughts? And then we'd love for you guys to sound off in whatever comment section that you're listening to this platform on. All right, Jason. So what is The First, sir?
So The First is, it's a lot of things, but it's essentially a commentary video network that does, it's got Jesse Kelly, it's got Dana Lash. She used to be the former spokesperson at the NRA. A more moderate voice in Mike Slater. So it's got a nice broad range of voices on the conservative kind of side. And so they have shows, and some of them have radio shows, and then they put them on, in video format. And so it's cool. It's super free speech. I love working at places where people are free, even, that are quote unquote conservative or right leaning or whatever you want to call it, who still disagree and can disagree, and work with those people and have them under the same umbrella. Because I love talking to people like that. I love hanging out with people like that. So it's a cool mix of places to be. And it's kind of one of those places that, will not, they won't tell you what to say, what you can think. It's like, I very much vibe with that. So it's a cool place. I'm really enjoying it.
When did you guys launch this?
So this was launched, probably 4 or 5 months ago. So it's pretty much brand new. And Dana Lash was, I think, like the face of it. She was one of the first big names that they brought out. But yeah, it's a pretty new venture. I think it's a little different than, you mentioned the Blaze. It's not quite like the Blaze. It's not really a news platform. It's, like I said, it's more opinion and commentary and kind of like, just putting like a culture spin on current events and stuff like that. Not so much, the breaking news type of stuff. And I like that too, because, it's really upfront. It's like, this is what we believe. This is opinion. If you want the news, go somewhere else.
Yeah. I like that you differentiate that, because we don't do that enough, right? I don't care if it's Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity. We just don't do that
or
enough.
CNN, man.
Or whatever. Exactly. You got people on prime time on a news network, quote news, and it's supposed to be opinion, and then yet they have breaking news all the time, and it's their opinion. It's a problem. It's a problem across the political spectrum, and I think it continues to divide us because division sells.
It's why I support local journalism so much, because look, I'm a conservative guy. We disagree on plenty, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will disagree with me on plenty. But when it comes to, like, we need journalism, right? Like, we need objective journalism to where we can differentiate between what is true and not. And for me, the only place I feel like is left for me is local journalism. And so I really like the Dallas Morning News. I feel like their coverage has been so spot on during COVID. But yeah, it's a big problem for me because I don't want an echo chamber. I have people who I like who are thought leaders, but at the end of the day, I need to have somewhere where I can just get the facts. And I feel like you said, CNN, Fox News, it's really hard to find that. And my biggest pet peeve are news organizations that pretend to be objective, but they're not. Like, I don't mind if you, and that's what I was talking about with The First. I don't mind if you want to say We are an opinion-based platform, and we're going to give you our opinion, and this is what it is. When you try to pretend, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but when you try to pretend like you are primetime news, cough, cough, Chris Cuomo, cough, cough, Don Lemon, you're not objective. Like, just be upfront about it. And then, if there's some way they need to label the shows to really, make that distinction, that's fine. But I hate how we can't just admit that there are certain people who are biased and we shouldn't be labeling it just hard news.
I agree. I agree 100%. And I will also agree that it's a problem across the political spectrum. I do think that it has a far more egregious presence on one particular network, right? Because, and I'm obviously talking
CNN.
No, I'm not a CNN cheerleader at all.
I knew you were going to go there.
I couldn't list 5 people on CNN. Chris Cuomo is one of them. Cuomo, I can't even say his fucking name right. But Fox and Friends in the morning, and Jon Stewart years ago did a brilliant breakdown of this. Like, it starts in the very early morning all the way through. Now, Morning Joe does as well, but Morning Joe, I don't know, man. It doesn't seem to be such a propaganda arm. It just seems to be a little bit more of a slanted opinion. I was on Fox and Friends in 2012, and really interesting experience. I won't bore everybody with it, but it was tied to restaurants, which will come full circle in our conversation here about what's happening tomorrow in Texas. Steve Ducey has a cousin that does sports here in Dallas, right? I'm sure you know that, correct? He's on, what's his first name? Mike right. Ducey. And so Steve and I were talking sports and talking about his cousin, and he was just amazing. And Gretchen was there at the time, and I was in the green room having coffee with Colin Powell. It was just a really cool experience. But I just remember I was watching them film. I was in the studio and right on the couch and everything. And man, to see that up front too, like front row seat of just this, and it wasn't as bad then either, I might add, right? I feel like in the Trump era that things have just gotten worse.
I think the Trump era has broken all sides of journalism. I feel like everything has gotten much worse. And there's so little room for there's so little room for dissent on the pro-Trump side, and there's so little room for objectivity and just fairness on the anti-Trump side. It drives me nuts.
But, and I agree with you, right? I do. I think that Trump has had some bad press for sure, but he's also vilified the media to a point where anything that someone says negative about him is fake news, and he goes after them. That's his tactic. That's what he does.
But
and it works.
It's a double-edged sword though, because the only reason why that you're right. I will concede that about Trump. He is. And one is because he is so effective at garnering support when he is the quote unquote victim, right? When he is a fighter and he's fighting against the media or whoever it is, he can rally his base behind him. And so it's in his best interest to always be playing the victim of that. But the only reason why it works is because there are so many cases of the media getting it wrong because they're so eager to get him. And what's frustrating about that is there are legitimate stories that are not unfair, that become lumped into all the missteps and all the misfires and all the faulty reporting. And then at the end of the day, you're right. Then it's all fake news, and then everybody thinks that everything that's reported is wrong. And so it's like a feedback loop on both sides. And now here we are, and it's hard to know what the facts are anymore.
I agree, but with all due respect, I think there's a little bit of a false equivalency here. If there's 20 stories about Trump that are negative, okay, 18 of them are going to be right on the fucking money, all right? Because they're reporting what he said and what he did. Sometimes they do screw up. But here's the problem: when you have him and he is vilified the media and everything is fake news, they cannot slip once. because if they do, he'll eat them alive, and then it just solidifies his entire war cry about the media. And I would also push back on this real fast, and we'll get off Trump because this will turn into its own separate podcast.
Exactly.
I don't think he's I don't think he's a fighter, and I don't think he's tough. You and I are both. You're a born and raised Texan, correct?
Correct.
As am I. Right? I'm not from California. I didn't move here from Oregon. Nothing against anybody from those states or that are living here now. That's all fine and well. But come on, man. I grew up in Mesquite, Texas. I grew up around fighters and real tough guys. I don't mean just like gangbangers. I mean like just tough, thick skin, tough guys. This guy's not tough. He's not tough.
There is a big difference between a political fighter and what you're talking about in a tough fighter, right? He is a political fighter in that he will, and this isn't necessarily a compliment, right? He is a political fighter in that he will do everything in his power to destroy you if you are coming after him or if you're in his way. So that can be a good or a bad thing, but he certainly is that, and he has proven that he is not afraid. You know, if you attack him, he's gonna punch back pretty hard. That doesn't mean he's a tough guy in his personal life, but when it comes to politics and in business, I think he's proven to be ruthless. And like I said, that can be a good or a bad thing.
Okay, he's proven to be ruthless. I cannot argue that point, 100%. And I had a conversation the other day with some people. In fact, it was on this platform, and Matt Rogers from Politidote. We actually did our first vlog, our first on-air podcast. I almost asked you if you wanted to do that actually, but neither here or there. Maybe some other time. Our first on-camera podcast, and we talked about Trump and people saying that he's dumb, and I'm like, he's not dumb. That guy's not stupid at all. I think he's intellectually lazy. I think he is a conspiracy theorist. I think he's a habitual liar. There's a lot. I think he's unethical and immoral. There's a lot of things about him that I despise. And by the way, I always have. My wife, she's going through a divorce, but she's still technically my wife. Back in 2004, I remember her watching the Apprentice, right? And it was during the Bush Kerry the campaign. And I would come in, I was like, how do you watch this asshole? Like, I can't stand this guy. I've never liked him. This has nothing to do with Obama birtherism, has nothing to do with politics, really. It doesn't. It has to do with character or lack thereof. So that's always kind of been my opinion of him. But I was talking on this vlog that I was like, but he's not dumb. And he's brilliant in very dangerous ways. And I think we'll just end it with your point that he is politically ruthless, and that's factually correct. And he's probably going to get reelected. I'm going to just say that right now.
Well, I'll put a bow on it. I'll say he's absolutely 100% going to get reelected unless the plans to reopen are a disaster, and that's a pretty good segue, I feel like.
That's a great segue. So let's talk about now, and I want to focus. This will be a little bit of a myopic discussion here for the next 20 minutes or so. Let's talk about our state. I mean, obviously, we can tie in things on a national level or hell, international level if we wish, but very specifically Texas, because as of tomorrow, and aforementioned at the top of the show, I listed everything out, which, by the way, I literally pulled from your tweet because you had it broken down perfectly. For those of you listening, I will not name names of businesses or anything like that on the show, but I have been in the restaurant business for 25 years. I was ops director for a steakhouse group on the ops team of a steakhouse group for 15 years. I owned a bar. I can say the name of the bar because it's closed now in Uptown, Nickel and Rye. That was mine. Me and a couple other people. And I do restaurant software, and I do consulting, and I'm building a new bar as we speak in McKinney, Texas, that now will not open until early next year, which is fine. Let's get past this shit. So I say all that to put it in perspective that nobody wants restaurants to open, or businesses, period, right? But restaurants to open more than I do. First of all, I make a lot more money when they're open. So just from a self-serving perspective, my income's in half right now. I want that income back, so fuck yeah, let's open. But here's my problem, and I'm torn on this because I'm consulting involved in a lot of bars and restaurants right now, and a lot of us are opening tomorrow, and I'm helping a lot of them out, and I feel comfortable with it overall. But here's my question to you, Jason, because I saw you celebrate it on Twitter, which is sort of the catalyst of this discussion. But what is different tomorrow versus 3 weeks ago? What is the actual scientific, medical, whatever, how you want to phrase it, rationale for opening tomorrow when, in fact, even though we had a dip last week in North Texas, in the DFW area where you and I both live, there's been a spike. It's gone up, okay? And now we're over 60,000 deaths in the country. So why tomorrow?
So I'll give you my take on this, which may or may not be controversial. I don't know. I haven't elaborated on it yet, but here is my take on it. The numbers are going to continue to go up for a little bit, and unfortunately, more people are going to die, and it's super unfortunate, and it's tragic, really, what's happening everywhere. The thing that we have to refocus on or remind ourselves of, I feel like, is that we are not going to wait this virus out. This virus, not only is it more than likely going to make a reemergence in the fall, combined with the flu, which is going to be hellish in and of itself, but this virus is here, and it's become a part of our everyday life. And so what I'm thinking of, and what I'm trying to be more of an adult than I think a lot of people are being so black and white of either we stay home and nobody dies, which isn't true, right? Like, we're staying home, people are still dying, or we reopen and everybody dies. Like, that's kind of the debate I'm seeing, and it's to me, that's just silly, and it's childish, and it's just not based in reality. The reality is we have a deadly virus, but we also have an economic crisis unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime, and possibly in the last century, right, outside of the Great Depression, of havoc being wreaked on our economy, which involves people losing their jobs, which involves homelessness, which involves, all kinds of hell that we haven't even fully realized yet. And so there are two tragedies happening simultaneously. And that's why this thing is so it's the worst thing. It's a really crappy situation. But if we don't at least start taking baby steps, which what's happening in Texas is a baby step. It is not Georgia, nail salons opening tomorrow. It is, restaurants, other places opening at 25% capacity, with people being urged to continue to be smart, wear masks. I know there's some stores that have mandatory mask requirements, but we have got to start getting back to some sort of commerce, some sort of normal, even though it's not going to be anywhere near normal, if we want to have anything of an economy to come back to. Because I'll tell you what's even worse than a deadly virus is a deadly virus that makes a reemergence in the fall while 30 million people are still unemployed and we're in a Great Depression and people are standing in bread lines. That's worse than a virus.
You're very specifically saying the combination of the two, which is smart. You're not just saying, bread lines are worse than dead people. You're saying bread lines and dead people anyway are worse than just dead people. Right. I think that's an important distinction, because that's a gray area that I agree with you is not being talked about enough. And there's a lot of what you just said. Hell, really, most of what you just said, I agree with for the most part. It's and to give Trump credit, I will. Occasionally he says something that I agree with. Occasionally, and one of them is that that you can't have the cure be worse than the sickness, or I'm paraphrasing, but
right.
however he said it, or you can't have the sickness be worse than a cure. But you get my idea. We can't make things worse by virtue of the problem. It has to be like this balancing act. And that's what I'm trying to reconcile in my head. And I don't know what that is, but I still can't get out of my head. And listen, I was in a bar this afternoon that's a client of mine, literally helping them measure 6 feet for duct tape for people coming in tomorrow to stand and have a drink. So I'm in it. I'm in the trenches. I get it. I just wonder. Here's my fear, and it's not just restaurants. It's everything. It's malls. It's movie theaters. It's everything. What happens if we open up the way we are tomorrow? And again, you're right. Georgia is doing things that are not baby steps at all. So there's a lot of things that Abbott has done that I very much appreciate. I also want to point out that he's talked about making drinks to go permanent. Thank you, Governor. We should do that. Okay,
we're all on board.
Good idea. We're all on board on that. I'm particularly on board with that. I make money on that, so yes, let's do it. If you can go to the liquor store and buy a bottle of whiskey, why can't you just take a whiskey drink and that's wrapped in cellophane and you take it, right? It's not like you're not walking out with sucking a straw on your cocktail. You shouldn't be. If you are, that operator isn't doing it right. But what happens if there's a spike in deaths, right? And then there's a knee-jerk reaction to that, which naturally there should be. It's horrible to even say that out loud, that there would be a spike in deaths. God forbid. But if there is, then we go backwards. And then we're not just where we are before we did this, we're 10 steps behind. And that's also my fear, is that could this be counterproductive? Could this backfire? And I know there's a lot of whataboutisms and what ifs and everything, but again, it's not based on science. In your tweet, and I don't have it in front of me, so I didn't paste this part of it, but you said something about the governor's basing this off medical advice, whatever. But Jason, with all due respect, man, from who? There's nobody that's saying in the medical world that's saying this is okay. And again, nothing has improved. In fact, it's gotten worse, but we're reopening at the same time. It's just, again, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around that.
So I think when we talk about based in science, I think more what Governor Abbott's talking about is, I think, if you're asking a medical expert what we should do, they're not really going to be taking into other factors like we're talking about with the economy or with people's jobs or their livelihoods or the fact that they need to feed their kids. What they're thinking about is the virus, right? And how do we defeat the virus? So in that sense, yeah, they're not going to recommend reopening. However, life is more complicated than that. And when Abbott's taking the advice of medical experts, I think what he's talking about is how to proceed and how to move forward and how to when to know when to go to phase 2, right? Are we ready to go to phase 2? Do we need to stay in phase 1 longer? Do we need to pull back from phase 1? If in the first month that we reopen, that, we double our cases, right? I think that's what he's talking about. And I respect that and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I was talking about we need to, it's hard to hear, and I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but we also need to readjust our expectations in that in a pandemic, we want the numbers to go down, right? We want the numbers to dramatically go down. Until we peak, that number is going to keep going up. And if we decide to reopen, almost certainly the numbers are at least initially, hopefully not for a long term, are going to spike a little bit. There are pros and cons to what we're trying to accomplish. And there's no playbook for this. This is unprecedented in our history. But to me, I feel like our country cannot afford to stay. We've been shut down for essentially a month and 30 million people unemployed, $3 trillion added to the deficit overnight, basically. Because of a lot of irresponsible governing for the last 20 years or 30 years or however long, we're not in a position to simply just remain closed for another month, in my opinion. I'm sure there's some brilliant economists who would say we could print money and everything will be fine. But in my opinion, I feel like we are nearing the exhaustion point of our abilities to just spend our way out of a crisis. When 30 million people aren't working, where is the tax money going to come from? If we don't figure out how to start the recovery process now, let's do it baby steps. Let's do it smart. Hopefully our society is responsible enough to understand the gravity of the situation and continue being responsible, which is questionable with some of the stuff I've been seeing at the beaches and other places. So we can talk about that if our society is capable of this. But if we don't start taking a step in that direction, my fear is, 5-6 years of economic downturn and depression and recession, that is very, very deadly, just as deadly, in my opinion, as this virus has been and continues to be. We have to look at the whole picture.
We do. You can't just strip people of their livelihood. and I'm seeing it firsthand. I've had, obviously I'm in a blue collar environment in terms of restaurants and bars, and I'm employed and been around servers, cooks, bartenders. These are good people. These are hardworking people, but they don't have money put away, right? I was one of them through college and leading into my career in the restaurant industry. I know you. Now, granted, you blow a lot of money that you make in cash on any given night as you go out afterwards, but that's a different conversation. But still, these are good, hardworking people, and it's not just, again, hospitality; it's everything. And they can't feed their families, and right now they might be getting a little bit of a break. I mean, their $1,200 check obviously is not going very far, maybe a little rent relief or whatever. But if this continues, you are correct. The ramifications of that are breathtakingly scary.
And they've already begun. People and it's already happened. People are committing suicide, and it's tragic. Yeah. And it's not. It doesn't make me any less sympathetic to the victims of the virus. To say that I am very concerned about those people as well. I mean, I've already heard countless stories of people taking their own lives after. There are people who are, have mental illness and just need, to be pushed over the edge to take their own life, and it's going to happen. That's the sad reality, and what's really actually frustrated me with the people, and I appreciate you not doing this, but there are plenty of people who their sole interest is using this virus to get at Trump, to blame every single death on Trump, to every time somebody dies, it's Trump's fault. It's this or that. If you disagree, then you only care about the stock market and you're, a rich white person, whatever. Like I've gotten plenty of that, and it's just not true. It's not, could Trump have done things better? Of course, 100%. But this virus is ravaging the world. And I don't want to live in communist China where they barricade me in my home to kill the virus. And it's going to be deadly. It's a deadly virus. So I'm open to critiques on Trump's handling of the virus, but the idea that somehow we could have prevented this from happening outside of literally shutting off all travel and locking people in their homes is just silliness.
It is, and there's some validity to that statement, and there's a lot of things that I don't do as a liberal that pisses off liberals. Okay, I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm a faux liberal in the liberal world because of that. Just that alone, right? I still like Bill Maher. He's now a racist bigot or whatever. Although he's certainly have said some things about Muslims that piss me off, but overwhelmingly he's a rather rational person. And that's, I could go all day long about I think liberals are killing liberalism, and I've tweeted that, I've said that, and I mean it, and it's fucking accurate. They drive me crazy. But again, a conversation for another day. But as far as Trump goes, so what I would say to a lot of what you just said, I do agree that he didn't cause this, but all presidents get too much credit for things they shouldn't get credit for, including economies, whether that's Bill Clinton or Trump. And I would argue that with Obama, I could at least tie in specific choices that were made during a recession that led to things that were positive. Now, whether or not you want to argue that those things actually slowed it down, it could have happened faster if they went a different route, that's a fair discussion, but at least there's a correlation. But Trump inherited an economy that was going up, right? And he built on it with a few things, and that's fine. And Bill Clinton inherited .com. I mean, right? And then presidents also get blamed for a lot of things that happen on their watch they probably shouldn't get blamed for. I think my issue with Trump with the pandemic is, first of all, he called it a hoax. I accept zero spin on, no, he was referring to Democrats dead. No bullshit. He called it a hoax. It's not in a vacuum. He said that in conjunction with several other comments.
Explain what you mean by that, though, because I do need to look. So, because I do agree with you on the point that there's no question he downplayed it. I mean, you can't really argue that fact that he downplayed it. As far as the hoax, right. I just want to understand what you're saying, because I've heard I've heard people say that and heard the justification behind it. I don't think, I mean, to call a virus a hoax is one thing. To call the overplaying of it a hoax is a separate thing. So I'm just trying to understand what you mean by that he called it a hoax.
Well, if he says it's a hoax, it's their new hoax. It's their new Russia, which also, by the way, wasn't a hoax in itself. There might not have been the legal term of collusion, but there was some unsavory shit that went on between Trump and Russia. Period. End of story. The Mueller report did not exonerate him at all. But that's again another conversation. I'm gonna go down rabbit holes here. So when he says that, that's just like him calling something fake news that isn't, right? And again, he says it's a hoax. The next day, he says that this is going to go away magically soon. There's not going to be any deaths, etc. If this would have been any other president, and you took the way he has put this in context with like his personal views on it and dismissing the medical opinions and what have you, it probably would have ended a presidency. But Trump, being Trump, can get away with anything. He says and does things on a daily basis that would have ended most presidencies, and he gets away with them literally on a daily basis. But kind of moving on from that. But like right now, let's talk about just now. That's more important. The administration has done some good things, but he can never rise to the occasion of a leader. I mean, just a leader. I don't mean a Republican or a Democrat or even a president for that matter. Just a leader. What I expect from my general managers in restaurants and bars, I have a higher expectation for them than what he presents to the country. Go to his Twitter feed right now, and I will Venmo you $500 if you can find a tweet from him, a sympathetic tweet about the 60,000 dead Americans. He might have retweeted something that his wife put out 3 weeks ago, but he doesn't even reference it because if he says anything about it, it makes him politically look bad.
Okay, well, if you're offering me $500, let me check. I mean, you can't find something where he puts out a tweet about he's sympathetic about the dead Americans, and if you find some weird obscure quasi reference 4 weeks ago, congratulations. But my point is that he's unfit for this job. Now, is Joe Biden fit for the job? I'm not a Joe Biden fan, okay, but I'll take Joe Biden over Donald Trump any day of the week and twice on Sundays. To be honest with you, dude. I have zero in common with Mike Pence politically. Zero. But when I hear him speak, I'm like, Jesus Christ, can we just make him president? I'll take Mike Pence as president right fucking now for the next 5 years, and I'll even volunteer to cancel the election. Like, there's not even going to be an election. If just make Mike Pence president, and then we'll have our next election in 2024. I would take that bet or take that deal right now on the table because at least he's an adult and at least he's empathetic and at least he's mature. All right? Oh, jeez. Ooey vey. All right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you respond. I was just going to say no $500 for me.
No, so you're not going to find it, dude. It's terrible.
I feel like I've seen one before, but.
He retweeted it from Melania.
Is that what it was?
I swear to God, it is. I'm not kidding. It's awful. Like, just think about that. He's the president of the United States, and he tweets more about Don Lemon and Psycho Joe than he does dead Americans. It's horrendous, man. It's absolutely horrendous. And again, I don't know what the hell is going to happen in this election. I think it's probably 50-50 for the most part. I mean, the guy won over 3 states with 70,000 votes, right? Razor thin, and lost the popular vote 3 million. Doesn't mean he can't do that again, and I think he likely will. But
I do think it's incredible that, and this must be what I think you're experiencing. What Republicans experienced. Well, I say that, but I don't think anybody they could have put up would have had a chance against Obama. But with Mitt Romney and with John McCain, I think you're now experiencing the same thing with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. I don't know what you guys are doing. Like there is plenty of talent in terms of political stars on the Democrat side, and especially with the economy that Trump had going into 2020. Now, obviously, it's a different story today, and I think that's his biggest liability. But to put Joe Biden as the front runner. I'm still kind of dumbfounded by the whole thing. It's like the only chance to lose.
I didn't vote for him.
Yeah,
I didn't vote for him, but here's the thing about Hillary Clinton. I will defend her in this regard. She was a terrible candidate. Okay, fine, she lost. She also had an FBI investigation opened up days before the election by James Comey, the guy that was working to throw Trump. That doesn't get discussed enough. It's like, dude, James Comey cost Hillary the fucking election, for God's sakes. Like, come on with that nonsense. But here's what I'll say about her, right? And obviously she's flawed and she's not likable. Neither is he. And he had the two most unlikable people ever running, and so that was a problem from the word go. However, let's make sure that there's a couple of things on the record here. She had an outstanding run on the debates. I think she kicked his butt on 2 out of the 3, and even on the third one, call it a wash. That's fine. She still overwhelmingly won, and all the polls said so. Her convention was great. Her speech was great. She garnered more votes than Obama did in 2012. She was also the first actual female candidate to run for president. That's breaking glass ceilings as a father of 2 daughters, and like that's just something I will always reference because that's monumental. So she was.
You know what the problem is though? I think back to those debates, and you know what the only thing I remember is?
What's that?
The only thing I remember when I think, I just think Hillary Trump debates.
Going to jail?
That's the only thing I remember.
Yeah, I knew it, dude. I knew you were going to say that.
You'd be in jail. That line, as childish and silly as that line was, he won all the debates with that somehow in that. And this was before, we were Trumped out. I think a lot of people are Trumped out and like it's no longer as strange and as, it's no longer new. But at that time, hearing a presidential candidate say something like that to the former Secretary of State, I mean, you've never seen anything like that in your entire life. No. I mean, and I remember watching that and being like, what is going on? And so I don't think he has quite the advantage that he had in those debates with Biden, other than that, in my opinion, Biden should be at home with his family, sleeping and resting and enjoying his time. But I think Trump doesn't have quite that advantage anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. That's all I remember from those debates.
That's a good point, and I knew the moment you said that what you were going to reference. Let me just say this about Biden, and I'm defending him loosely here because I am not a fan. This Sleepy Joe and everything, obviously, whatever. That's Trump's cruel nicknames, and there's sometimes I hate when I laugh. I can't lie. Sometimes I laugh. Sometimes he makes me laugh. I'm like, I hate when he makes me laugh because he's such a son of a bitch, and he's the president. He shouldn't be talking like that. But that's just pretty funny. Like I can't lie, that shit's pretty funny. But Trump has this exuberant personality that somehow allows us to like overlook his own. The man can't speak either, and like you show me a clip of Biden, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, look at this clip of Trump from like 2 days ago. There's like footage of him, and like 2 days ago, he's like his eyes are drooping. He's like, I love you guys, and he's mumbling to himself, and he got caught on camera. It's the weirdest thing ever. Like, what is that? And it goes away the next day. There's nothing. I mean, no one's even put that into. And this is the problem with Democrats. They're awful. If that would have been Biden, because it has been Biden, that would have already been in a campaign ad, and Trump would have retweeted it, and Trump just got away with being weird and like, I don't know, he's like hopped up on Vicodin or what. It was freaking bizarre, and he gets away with it because he's Trump.
I will say Trump is known. I think Trump has. He says weird things. He says strange things. He ad-libs constantly, and I think it makes it easier for him to shrug off when something goes awry. I will say, as somebody who's watched Biden for years and years, and obviously I was, in my past life as a conservative journalist, where I actually took that oath very seriously, and you would have been surprised how committed I was to my objectivity, even though I was, working for a conservative publication back then. As somebody who's watched Biden throughout the Obama years and has watched Biden, throughout all these news cycles, there is something noticeably different going on with Joe Biden right now. And I don't say that in a mean way. I actually, personally, I really like Joe Biden as a person. I think he's funny. I think he's relatable. I think he's goofy. And very much that Uncle Joe that people talk about. I like him on a personal level. Sexual assault allegations aside, innocent until proven guilty. Obviously, the respect that nobody wanted to give Kavanaugh. But that being said, there is something different going on with Biden, and he's not sharp, and I'm not a medical professional, but I am not kidding you when I tell you it's not really dunking on Biden. I feel sorry for the guy, I really do.
He's not the same guy that debated Paul Ryan.
No, he's not.
There's no doubt about it. And I'll say this real fast because it's very loaded, and I need to wrap everything up here. But as far as the sexual allegations to Biden, let me just say this to all the liberals that the moment, or really anybody, the moment there's some kind of sexual allegation towards someone that you don't like politically, you automatically believe the accuser. And a lot of people right now are kind of reaping what they sow, because if you went around saying that believe all women, believe all women, believe all women, I have personally never said that. I love the fact that the Me Too movement exposed a bunch of dirtbags, and that some are dead, and I don't care that they are, and some are in prison, and I hope he dies there. Harvey Weinstein specifically. But we need to take sexual assault very seriously. And again, I have daughters. It's something extraordinarily close to my heart. With that said, women are people, and people are liars, okay? And so I don't want to say that someone coming forward with a sexual assault charge is automatically lying. I would like to assume that they're not and give them the benefit of the doubt, but also give their accuser the benefit of the doubt as well. And no one's doing that. And right now, the people that are defending Biden without any hesitation whatsoever you're right, Jason, the same people that, whether it was Brett Kavanaugh or you name whoever, put them on the list, went after that person and said they're guilty, period, end of story. This is what happens when you have that mentality, when you have that attitude, and then it's going to come back around, it's going to bite you in the ass, right?
And
period, end of story.
What makes that so dangerous, though, and I'll make this my closing point, what's so dangerous about what's happening now, and I'm in 100% agreement with you in that I'm a huge due process guy. There's been people, that have had their lives ruined on false accusations, people who have gone to jail for decades on false accusations, right? So it happens, and we need to defend due process. But what makes what's happening now more egregious and actually, I think, a lot more nefarious is we're talking about not just people who are, like you said, people are people, and people make mistakes, and pundits are obviously going to support a political candidate because it's their guy and they're going to defend them and not believe the accuser. I actually expect that. I don't like it, but I expect it. What I don't expect and I don't accept, and what is the only thing that makes me actually pissed off about what's going on with Tara Reade and Joe Biden, is you're talking about the media at large, and I am going to generalize because it's that pervasive. The media at large not covering the story, not just not covering it, has no interest in determining whether the allegations are true or false. In where with the Kavanaugh story, when you had laughable, and I'm not going to get into Dr. Ford because, again, I respect her. I always said I respected her. I don't know if it's true or not because I wasn't there and there's not enough evidence to convince me one way or another. But she came off as respectable. She showed up and testified. She did what she had to do, and I'm not going to disrespect her. But there were others, Julie Swetnick, some of the other accusers, that were laughable. And there were more stories written on those than there have been on Tara Reade, who I think is a lot more credible than some of those accusers of Kavanaugh. So that the media can just ignore it and decide what they cover and what they don't cover when they are responsible for shaping the perception of the public at large. And I think that's where they are in their dereliction of duty is that they don't respect the power that they have over shaping the perception of the public. They think it's a game. Too many reporters are political cheerleaders, and they don't understand the massive responsibility that they have to the public. They don't see it as being a public servant, which they are. They have to be selfless and be public servants because what they print and what they allow people to see and know, the information that they give them access to, shapes their perception of the world and what appears to be true or not true. And nothing has been more stark than the way the media has to the very end, to the bitter end, to today, tried with all of its might to avoid touching this story.
I agree.
Wow.
I actually agree. But I will say this, Al Franken. Okay? So you can say there's a double standard right now, and there is. And quite frankly, I don't think that Trump's allegations are talked about enough because, again, everything's fake news, and he's a fascist.
But they were. They were, though. In the election cycle, they were talked about a lot.
Sure. And Chris Hayes last night he covered this story, and we'll see where it goes. It needs to be explored. I'm not saying that she's a liar.
And Chris Hayes is getting slaughtered, by the way, by the left.
He is. And again, look, I'm sure I'm clear on this. If you're a woman that's been sexually assaulted and you come forward, you're going to get attacked, and God bless you. And we need to explore and find out what happened. And I want women to be brave and come forward after they've been so horrendously attacked in a fashion like that. All I'm saying is this notion that, and this was a hashtag, like believe women, believe all women, whatever. I'm like, what the fuck is that? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Women are people. People lie. People manipulate. People go out to destroy lives. Like you said, there are men and, for that matter, women that are sitting in prison today for crimes they didn't commit in terms of sexual assault. Today. They're sitting there in prison while you and I are yapping away here in the Dallas area on a podcast. I mean, I was never a person who went after people on sexual assault. And then you have the Al Frankens who lost his political career over what? Over a picture of him. I mean, I'm not defending the picture, but really, I don't know, man. It's just also, there's no consistency to it, Jason. And can we get to that? Can we have some consistency?
That's what we need. And that's what we need, because what it's turned into now, and the only reason why people came for Al Franken's head is because of the glaring inconsistency and the desire to make them play by the unfair rules that were made. And then at the end of the day, we're all just slaves to this ridiculous, like you said, inconsistent system that we've built for ourselves, where the victims are no longer the first priority. It's all about, using these instances to get our political opponents, when at the end of the day, we should have a set of standards, which we do. It's built into our justice system, innocent until proven guilty. We take the allegation seriously. We investigate it just like we would any other allegation. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. The Washington Post still needs to investigate it just as thoroughly as they did Kavanaugh. And then that would be it. But I think that's some wishful thinking.
That is some wishful thinking. On that note, great place to end the show. Real fast, are you going to any restaurants tomorrow that you've been wanting to go to?
I don't think so. I think me and my wife talked about maybe going to a drive-in movie just to get out of the house finally. And but still we could keep plenty of distance. But we haven't made any final decisions. But we might try to do that for a date night. Leave the kids sleeping at home with a friend.
Nice. I'm going to be. Actually, I had my kids over the weekend, but I'm going to be kind of helping people out, and I just wish everybody in Texas tomorrow that are opening up, please just practice social distancing and make this work. Let's get our economy back open, and let's get North Texas back rolling again, because Texas is one of the best states in the country to live in. Period. End of story. I'll say that as a liberal. I know that you have Texas.
The best place to live.
if I could get into so many reasons why, from a business perspective, from, I own 2 homes, and I couldn't afford to own 2 homes in California. And I love California. It's a beautiful state, and I have a lot of fun there. It's great. I love a lot of people. But I don't want to get this Texas, California things. I don't buy into that bullshit. I just use that as an example just because it's so expensive. Quite honestly, Jason, I couldn't own what I own in Austin. To
right,
be fair.
exactly.
right. Anyway, all right, man. So I really appreciate you coming on. Why don't you, if you don't mind, where can we find you on Twitter? And if you have anything you want to plug real quick, please do.
So find me on Twitter at Jason_Howerton. Go ahead and send me mean tweets, mad tweets, happy tweets. Follow me. And I'm actually, if you want to I do, my company does a lot of digital strategy. So if you want to check out the website, it's reachdigital.org. See some of the cool people we've worked with. But yeah, it was fun, man.
Awesome. Well, listen, I hope to do this again. This is great. I really appreciate you coming on. We've been, again, like you said, we've been talking about this for a month. And by the way, guys, that wraps up this episode. I appreciate you listening. On behalf of Michael Malloy, Jeremy Grokey, and myself, we would appreciate it if you would follow us on Twitter at LeftCrewPolitic. And there's no S there because of the character limitations. Over on Facebook, we've really blown up over there. 12,000 of you have followed us, and we love you guys for that. Thank you. Just keep it going. YouTube, I promise you, we're going to try to build that. But we're now doing vlogs. Check that out with Matt Rogers from Politidote. We did our first on-camera podcast. Go watch that there. And then you can find us wherever great podcasts can be found. And our original guest and friend of the show, announcer Rachel, she'll take us out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of our Left Crew Politics podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Left Crew Politic. Follow the Facebook page at facebook.com/leftcrewpolitics and the LCP website, leftcrewpolitics.com. Search for our channel on YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play.